What's going on, listeners? Welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies. And if you're listening, today is Mondays with Maximoff. That means a couple of things. One, I am joined by Rob, and I am joined by Harrison of the Basement Binge, and we are starting to get close to the end here, episode 8. So I'm super excited about this episode. I know Rob and Harrison have a lot of views on this. So, Rob, welcome. Getting pretty close, huh?
Yeah. It's funny. My kids will count down the days before Christmas and the number of sleeps it is until Christmas Day. And I kind of feel like I'm at the point with the season finale of this. I'm literally counting down the days until we're able to see this whole thing wrap up. And we've been talking about it a lot throughout this season, that this was a show that kind of slipped under the radar with the Disney Plus announcements of all the things we were expecting. I think everybody was very excited about the Loki project, and certainly the Captain America sort of sequel of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We were all very excited about it. Then there was this quirky show that they announced, WandaVision, and we didn't really know what to expect. And I think, Matt, you and I kind of shared the same viewpoint that when they hit us with all of the trailers we got on the Disney Investor Day, and we saw some glimpses of what this show was going to be, I think we got really excited about what this could become, and just the trippy, mind-blowing nature, and just the fact that the rules could be anything. They really took a gamble with this show, and it has paid off immensely. I think this is, right now in pop culture, this is the most talked about show on television by far. I'm not sure there's anything that even comes close right now.
Yeah, it definitely, to me, I said last episode that it reminded me of the chance they took with Iron Man, that this was, a risk to start the next content that we got since it had been so long with this show. But it certainly paid off. But again, listeners, the other host of this episode, Harrison from the Basement Binge, welcome back, man. Super excited. And again, same thing to you, man. We're getting close. It's almost bittersweet because it means this portion of Matt Goes to the Movies is coming to a close.
Yeah, it's crazy. First off, thank you for that very nice introduction. But earlier, I don't remember what day it was. It was after this episode had aired, and obviously before we recorded. I was thinking about Monday coming up and how we were going to record. I was like, oh man, I can't believe we're talking about the season finale. Like, my brain just kind of got mixed up in time. And I was like really sad, like, oh man, this is the last time we're going to record an episode for WandaVision. Even though the season finale hadn't even happened. I think I was just so excited for it. But yeah, like this has been super fun. I was telling the two of them, for the listeners, right before we jumped on here, that it's just been a weird day for me. I've been really lethargic and moving at the speed of a snail, and just kind of like not energetic or excited like my normal self. But as soon as I jumped on the call, Matt and Rob were talking about whatever they were, and I just was immediately in a better mood. So it's exciting to be here and talk about it, but also to do it with two people I've developed a great friendship with. So thanks for letting me be here. And I'm also just so excited to talk about this episode. Holy smokes, I have so much to say.
Yeah, there's a lot. So I think really, we'll get into it. But listeners of the show, what we're going to do now is the spoiler-free portion, what we're calling the 2-minute warning. If you've been listening to these episodes, it's going to be spoiler-free thoughts before we get into the real details. So I'm going to start off here with my thoughts of this episode. This is an episode that it took me twice to really get into it, because I thought we took a couple too many steps back without going forward. But on a rewatch and really getting to the heart of this episode and the themes that I thought were in the background of what we were being shown, I came to really, really like this episode. It's a very slow crawl, so to speak, but there's a lot of emotion involved in this episode. And I really think it set the stage well for the season finale of what really, we kind of knew before, but I felt this episode put into perspective what this really means for Wanda, why Westview is so important to her. And there's been times when I felt like Wanda is the villain and she's still doing something terrible, but this episode turned it for me a little bit more towards the she's so broken. And I really like that. Not that she's broken, but just the emotion that they portrayed and how important Westview is to her. So that's my portion of the spoiler-free parts of this. Harrison, why don't you get into your thoughts, and we'll have Rob jump in before we get into the spoiler portions. We'll let him go last with his spoiler-free section.
Okay, yeah. I have, so on Letterboxd, I always review, write a little snippet about what I think about each episode. And I've waited to give it give a star rating out of 5 till the series is over. I was going to rate the series as a whole instead of individual episodes. After this episode, I confidently put it at 5 stars. And I just knew after this episode and everything that it did, that without a doubt, it was a 5-star series for me, no matter what the season finale is. This episode, I know we've all said this so many times before, I don't think that even the season finale will be able to beat this episode for me as far as a favorite goes, with some of the things that you talked about, Matt, with how broken Wanda is and the way it changes her as a villain. And also, I remember on a previous episode, I think it was like episode 4 or 5, saying that like this is the most emotional one. The one where she tried to roll the credits on Vision. I remember talking about how like this is the most emotional episode we've got. And this just swamps any emotion that episode had. It really, I don't really cry in TV shows. They don't like, I can recognize the emotion, but I've never felt such empathy for a character. And there were multiple scenes that I was sitting there by myself on my lunch break on a Friday, just crying for poor Wanda. I was so moved by it, which I was not expecting this season to do. Aside from that, this was just packed with so many. At the beginning of these WandaVision episodes we've been doing with your podcast, Matt, it was so exciting to talk about what does this mean for the rest of the season? What does it mean for the rest of the MCU? And like kind of theorizing and coming with ideas. And the way that this episode wraps up so many ideas, fulfills wishes, and also creates an opportunity to have that same excitement of trying to figure out what's coming next, mixed in with the emotion. It just was everything I came to want from this season. So that was a little bit long, but let me just say, I had no idea what to expect when going into this season or this show at all. I had no idea what WandaVision was going to be, but I quickly realized it was going to be good and that I was going to love it. And this episode is exactly what I have come to want from WandaVision. And it's something that I didn't even know I wanted, which is just props to the show as a whole and also to this individual episode.
Good stuff. I think, Rob, I think we're all kind of excited to get into the spoiler portion. So why don't you take us home with your spoiler-free thought, and then, we'll get into it.
So, I kind of feel some similar things to what you guys have talked about. I think this show has given us things that we didn't even know we wanted to ask for, and they gave it to us in ways that we never would have been able to comprehend. That this has given us things we never even knew we wanted. And it's been such a blast week in and week out. I think what's really become obvious to me throughout this whole series, and I would even say what Disney Plus has given us with The Mandalorian, is they've been able to do things on television that they've never been able to really do on film. So you think about the 9 films of the Skywalker saga. Was there really anything as emotional as when Din takes his helmet off to say goodbye to Grogu? Maybe, depending on how you feel about Vader's body being burned at the end of Return of the Jedi, like maybe you kind of feel something about that. Not for me though. Like that was way more of an emotional hit. That part of The Mandalorian, and I would say, with the exception of different parts of Endgame, there's really not a lot in the MCU as a whole through those 23 films that hits me with the emotion of what we've seen in WandaVision. It's because they have time to tell this story. They're not trying to fit everything they're trying to tell about a story and about these people in 2 hours, 2.5 hours, or in the case of Endgame, 3 hours. They have several weeks to draw this out. They have weeks to build our excitement from one show to the next. I had the opportunity to talk to a fan of the Matt Goes to the Movie show, And he hadn't actually started WandaVision yet, but then he binged the whole thing in kind of one sitting. I think he was maybe 1 or 2 episodes behind at this point. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's definitely not the way to do this. Like, you have to have sat and waited week after week the way we did. Like, that's the only way you can truly appreciate what you're getting and building the mystery and the excitement. And then he told me that he was waiting to listen to the podcast till after he had completed all of those shows. Then he was going to go back and listen to all of our recaps. And I was thinking, oh God, no, please don't do that. Because if you've seen all the shows and then you go back and you listen to all the dumb crap I thought was going to happen, I'm going to look like the biggest idiot ever. Like, I don't think I've been right about anything. Like, I've been so wrong. And I honestly, what I would really love for the listeners of this show to do is interact with Matt's social media pages and send him an email. Tell him what your favorite thing is that I've been 100% wrong about on this series. Like, you've got a lot to choose from. You really do. And that's fine. Like, you think about shows like this, I never watched Lost, but I know a lot of people got into trying to figure out what was going on with it. There's week after week, you're just trying to guess what's going on. And to be this wrong week after week and still very happy about how wrong you were. Like, normally this kind of thing, you only feel validated. Like, the whole point of Jeopardy is not for the contestants to win. The point of Jeopardy is for you at home to feel really smart about getting the answers right. And that's kind of like what a mystery show normally is. Like, if you can figure out who the killer is before the people on screen do. And yet, as wrong as I've been, I can't wait to find out how much wrong I still have yet to be going into the final episode.
Yeah, it's certainly been exciting, and we've talked about that throughout the episodes. Not so much in these later ones, but in those beginning ones when we were really starting to try and, put theories together. We, all three of us separately, kind of used the line of, this could 100% mean something, or it could mean nothing. And this could lead to this, or I could be totally wrong. But it's been really fun being wrong, or seeing like, oh, okay, this is slightly what I thought, but there's this twist on it. This show has just been, it's been so much fun. But I want to get into these spoiler talks here. So, listeners, if you have not seen this episode and you're not doing what Rob just described, and you don't want to be spoiled, this is where you pause it, watch the episode, and come back to us, because we are going into the spoiler-free portion. And guys, I'm going to get this out of the way because it's a very rare speed bump in this episode for me, but it starts right at the beginning, and it's the opening. We open back in, sorry, Rob, give me the year again. I'm blanking on it.
I believe it was 1637.
There we go.
Wow.
In Salem. And this is where we are first introduced in the episode to Agatha and her being a witch. And I thought it was a little over the top, and I laughed out loud when they had to remove their hoods when they're talking to her. I hate those moments. Whenever people have to remove their hoods to say something that's super dramatic. I think I'm going to start doing that at my job when somebody asks me for a discount, and just make a joke out of it and be like, there is no discount. But the opening didn't really work for me, just because I felt it was a little over the top and it was a little cringy with that moment. But it certainly was interesting to see how she kind of is alone, so to speak. And presumably what we know is she thought she was the only one left. So, Rob, I'll let you kick it off. What's your thoughts on the opening of this episode?
Well, I want to go back even one piece further than you did to start it off. I loved the fact that for the Marvel title screen, they went from red and then morphed it into the purple. To really,
awesome.
Yeah, that was such a cool moment to let you know, like, okay, we're going to pick up where we left off from the last episode, introducing the spin-off series, Agatha, it was Agatha all along. which I just love the theme music they used for it. But yeah, right away we get this scene where you think initially she's being burned at the stake for being a witch, and then you realize, oh no, it's these other witches. There were parts of this that really didn't work for me initially, and on a rewatch, they kind of seem a little more obvious. Just there's actually a lot in this episode that I think was overdone. There's some overacting, I think, at times. There's some just, unnecessary over the topness that, that we see from Agatha and Catherine Hahn, who I've loved throughout this season. This was kind of a low point for me for her in this series. It just, some things when she had to go full on villain mode, some of it just limped in a little bit for me. It didn't land the same way it did when she was, pretending to be so frightened about the flubbed line or being at the edge of town when Vision kind of catches up to her, or certainly what we saw from her in the last episode. It just, I don't know. It's not something that it wasn't a great scene overall. And I would probably fast forward through it if I was ever to watch it a third time.
All right, Harrison, where do you stand on the opening?
It's really interesting. I remember watching the opening and just like my jaw was on the ground. Like, what is going on? I think I was just like so caught up in like, what's the word I'm searching for? What it meant for the character of Agnes or Agatha Harkness, that I wasn't too focused on the performances. I will say that I thought it was a little over the top, but I love that they just kind of let Catherine Hahn like turn it up to 11, and I just enjoyed her for being as wacky as she is. But it was kind of weird. But just to talk about it, I thought it was a great characterization for Agatha as a villain, someone who will go to no ends to get her way. She's incredibly powerful. She's incredibly intelligent and conniving and just really evil. And the way that it adds to her threat, she feels much more threatening after that scene. I always thought she was like, oh yeah, she's an evil witch. I had the theory that she was Agatha Harkness the entire season, and so I believe she was an evil witch. But to like have that scene where she, to me, was like this dramatically evil was kind of like a cartoony type fun, but also is like this lady's like nuts. Like, she's crazy, and crazy evil is the worst kind. So I'm excited for that characterization to continue.
All right. So one thing about this episode is, I mean, a lot of them are, but this episode is a lot of exposition, so to speak. Really, you see, we go back. It's one of the things I said in the beginning is we go back a lot to find out where we're going in the future, so to speak. And that starts with Agatha telling Wanda that she's a witch. She can't use her magic in the basement. And how did she do it? We're going to need to take a trip down memory lane. And she says a line, which I thought was pretty funny. Time to watch some real reruns within the theme of the show. I thought that was really good. But it also seemed to really quickly start to retcon what we thought we knew about Wanda in a lot of ways, especially her powers. So I'm curious, that first scene, Harrison, I'll go to you first, where they start to talk about Wanda's powers, and we find out why she has a fascination with sitcoms. And we also get a quick flashback. It's not quick, but we get the scene of Tony Stark's bomb landing in their home where they thought that it was going to kill them. And there's a spin on that scene because all this time, Wanda just thought it didn't go off, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So, Harrison, where are you on the lines of how they explained Wanda? And really, it seems like some of that is maybe paving the way for the X-Men to come in. I certainly felt that there was room there to say, well, these genes have been in people, and when they're exposed to trauma or she was exposed to an infinity stone that's jumping a little bit ahead. I thought they really opened up a pathway to start being able to introduce why maybe if they're not going to pull them from other realities, you could start to see the X-Men in this universe where they haven't been visible up until now.
Yeah, I actually really, really liked it. I'll first say that, like, when that scene started to play, I love the callback to the sitcoms, because I had a running theory. I don't remember if I said it or not on this show, that the reason that Wanda had created a sitcom reality for herself is that she probably grew up watching them, and that was her view of the West, and that's why it was called Westview. It was her perfect idea of what the West was like that she had viewed through her childhood viewing of sitcoms. So to see that play out, and like the emotional connection to her parents and the talking English and all the things that it means for the character of Wanda, I immediately just began to feel so sad for her, and immediately began to understand how broken she was. And then the bomb goes off while they're watching the sitcom, and this is abnormal for me. This is uncharacteristic of me traditionally. I just broke out into tears. I was like, oh my gosh, that's horrendous, the way that her parents died. And to like show that in like such shock really got to me. So I was affected emotionally by it. But then I immediately began to think, like, there's no way that she could have survived. So like I had the immediate impact of emotion, and then my mind just started going a million miles a minute, and I would just got more and more excited the more I thought, this is the X gene, this makes sense that her and Pietro were the only ones that survived the examination from the Mind Stone because they had the X gene and it was dormant. She probably just used her hex probabilities on the bomb to stop it, and then she didn't know, and I just like got super, super excited, and I like pretty much just like figured out what the rest of the episode was going to lay out, but in like a really excited way. Not to like say that I'm like Jimmy Neutron over here with a big brain, but like I've been so invested in trying to figure out the character of Wanda and what's led her to Westview that seeing that was really, really exciting. I can understand the complaints towards it because it kind of does feel like, oh, we're going to go back and like tidy up this thing that, we didn't have the Fox rights back then, but now we do, so we can tidy up what we want to do. But I think that the way that surprisingly the emotion hooked me, I was just tied in. They could have done whatever they wanted with me at that point because I was just so emotionally invested from that one brief moment, which was so uncharacteristic for me. So I don't know why this episode really hit me so strongly.
Rob, your thoughts?
A lot of thoughts. First, I want to talk directly to the listeners who are not comic fans necessarily, and I want to talk about retcon and why you should get used to this, because those of us who are comic readers, we're just kind of used to this idea that nobody's ever really dead. Like, I guess other than Uncle Ben, that's about it. Everybody else who's dead comes back. Like, nobody is ever dead except Uncle Ben. So a retcon, or a retroactive continuity, is kind of this thing where you sort of just don't really refer back to things that happened before, or you just conveniently decide that, well, this plot point or this thing that you used to believe, we're just going to change that. And usually it's some like just ridiculous reason. It's an alternate reality version, or there's something mystical, or there's something quantum or something cosmic, my two favorite buzzwords of how they fix everything that is really actually just like magic, but they want to use science instead of magic. They use one of those two words. Just get used to this idea, because we see it in comics all the time. Like, it's amazing to me, like in Gotham City, that nobody ever leaves. Like, it's like Joker takes over the city, it's completely burned out, and everybody, like, Batman beats him up, puts him in jail, takes Gotham back over, and then like 2 months later, Bane does the exact same thing, and everybody forgets that Joker literally just did it. I mean, Matt, where you and I live in Western New York, people leave when they raise taxes or when it snows 3 feet. Like, people just leave after that. Like, there's no reason anybody would ever live in Gotham City if it was a real place. But I digress. So
they got great coffee shops there.
Apparently, that's the only thing I can think. I don't know why anybody else would literally ever stay. But retcons, it's something that I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen in the MCU yet. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of it, with the uncertainty of what movie theaters are going to be like. You think about people that we thought were not part of the MCU anymore, like Tony Stark, like Captain America. Those actors were thinking maybe they would move on to other projects. Well, other than MCU related projects, I'm not sure what else gets people to line up in theaters in the post COVID world. So, or still during COVID world, truly. So don't be surprised if Chris Evans decides he wants to come back, or if Robert Downey Jr. decides he wants to come back in some way. So you could certainly see some retcons of people coming back. In terms of this actual scene, a couple things. What occurs to me is just how awful is their life of this family. There's just gunfire in the streets, there's fires burning, and they're just sort of meh about it. Oh, it's sitcom night, everybody. There's people shooting in the street. Now, it's just Thursday. That's what they do. There's literally gunfire and a war going on in the streets. And instead of like barricading their windows and huddling together, they're just like, which episode is it tonight, kids? Like, whose turn is it to pick? Like, it just really makes you, obviously we've talked about the various different traumas that Wanda has experienced throughout her life, but just simply growing up in that environment. We even got a glimpse of this in the Halloween episode, where they're showing them trick-or-treating, and you can see like the fires in the background, and you can hear the gunfire and the war going on around them while these kids are trying to participate in the act of trick-or-treating. I mean, it's just even growing up in that environment would be terrifying.
Which, again, though, who's handing out candy there?
Well, I think she gave her a fish too. Like, it was weird. Yeah,
I'm not handing out candy if it's raining. Let alone gunfire going off.
Yeah, but it's just like, no bit NBD for these folks. Like, that's just their life. Like, it's just always like this. I also say that I wanted the guy playing Papa. At some point, I just wanted to see him magnetically levitate something. I really wanted it. I knew we weren't going to get it, but selfishly, I wanted it. And I don't know how I feel, and I'm curious to see what you guys think. Having them go completely on the nose with the shows that this series has drawn inspiration from, showing us the Dick Van Dyke Show, showing us the DVD collection with Bewitched, and then later on, they're actually watching Malcolm in the Middle, which, the 2000s level show really drew a ton of inspiration from. I just don't know if I loved it. I kind of like it when things are kind of left unsaid. Like, we get the gist. Like, we kind of know that this is based a lot on Bewitched. Like, I don't know if I really love the fact that they just went right out and showed us these. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I think I probably would have been happier had they not given us that at all.
I didn't mind it in the sense that, Harrison, I'll let you piggyback off of it, but I didn't mind it in the sense that, like, why she liked them. Again, it's just, and again, maybe when it's your world and it's your life and this is your norm, it's different. But again, I'm just kind of like, in this place that they live, where in the heck did this guy get these DVDs? Like, you're telling me the Blockbuster hasn't been blown up? Like, everything, like what, and I know he said he was going to sell them, like, oh, I'll sell them tomorrow, or whatever the line was, to get money. But to me, it was like, where in the heck would you even have these in this part of the world that you're living in? Because every single day there's bombs and gunfire and everything else. So I didn't mind it in terms of like, oh, it was so on the nose. Like, this is exactly why these shows are the ones these styles are the ones that she picked. It just, again, if I'm looking at it from a lot of other things are trying to be looked at so seriously, I had a hard time with that transition, that they would even have these things, so to speak, based on where these kids grew up and what was going around them every day. So, Harrison, I'll let you get into that.
I think this is an interesting question for me to answer. I've realized as we've recorded these episodes together that when it comes to like writing, you guys think about things so much differently than me. I think you're just like so much wiser when it comes to stuff. Like, you guys are pointing out these things like, oh yeah, this is kind of like cheap writing. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, that actually kind of is. Why didn't I ever notice that before? But I never say that. I just kind of think like, oh yeah, you guys are right. To answer your question, I was going to say later, but I'll just say it now. That you mentioned, Matt, that this episode is a lot of exposition. Like we see the scenario, like the one we're talking about with the bomb or whatever one, and then Agnes shows up and or Agatha, I should call her real name. Agatha shows up and she just like summarizes it. And it's kind of cheap writing to be like, oh, in case you didn't get what we just showed you, we're going to have someone tell you. Which was weird because like my brain recognized like this is kind of dumb that they're doing it this way, but I loved every second of it. Like I couldn't wait for Catherine Hahn to show up and summarize it as loony as she is. Like I can't explain why I can recognize how kind of lazy it is or kind of cheap or dumbed down, but like I'm all for it. I'm like, yeah, just spoon feed me. I'm loving this. It's weird. I think that there's something that maybe I'm just an easy viewer, but I think the way that they executed it's for me at least just worked. So really, I have like no complaints about anything. I'll just happily be spoon fed in the corner. You guys are like the two adults at the table, and I'm like the bait. I'm like Jack. Like, just give me more.
Oh, jeez. I'm gonna lose my entire train of focus there because that got me. And I gotta tell you, I think I mean, Rob, I feel this way about you, but I think that might be the first time I was ever called wise. So I'm straightening my my shirt. I'm standing up a little bit straighter right now.
Or an adult, by the way. Like right. That's just not something I normally get.
Exactly. So Harrison, thank you so much. But you know, again, we're talking about exposition here and what happens. And we go from the scene of her being a kid to, I will say, and it was kind of cutthroat and it made me laugh, and it shouldn't make me laugh. But when Agatha says, so what I see here is, and I'm paraphrasing, a girl who loves sitcom, dead parents, and a ton of therapy ahead of her. I was like, that's terrible. Like, good. Like, good Lord, you're so horrible. But just the way that she delivered it was like, wow. So the next scene that we get, though, is almost the post-credit scene, so to speak, that we got from Captain America Civil War. No, I'm sorry, not Civil War. Winter Soldier, where we are introduced to Wanda and Pietro, minus Pietro in this scene, and she's with Loki's scepter, which it was really cool to see that back in scepter form. I like that a lot. But this scene was really cool because you get to see her amplified by the Infinity Stone. And I don't know if you guys have been able to, or listeners, if you've seen the still frame picture from her vision, but holy crap, her comic book costume that we see in that glimpse of like her seeing a future version of herself is unbelievable. I cannot wait to see that on screen because it looks amazing. But again, kind of going back and taking away what we thought we knew of, oh, well, she was given her powers because of the Infinity Stone. Now it's just it amplified what she already had inside her. So I did like this scene, but again, it's more of, boy, we can just go back and say, this is why this happened, and let's now drop these characters into this universe. So, Rob, I'll let you go first on this one. And, you know, one, what do you think of, you know, the next flashback? And two, have you gotten to see her costume in a still frame?
I have seen it. It's definitely out there. It's not hard to find. My overall feeling on it is I'm really not bothered by retcons as much because I'm a comic reader. So it's just right. Like, okay, finally we're getting one of these now. Like, I'm fine with that. Also, if this brings us closer to introducing the X-Men, listen, Feige, do whatever you got to do, man. Just bring me the X-Men. Like that's really just what I'm looking for. Not that I think they necessarily are hurting for money at the end, you know, with Marvel and Disney and that whole group. But if you look at the future of this, they kind of have some villain problems, I think. And Matt, I think we've talked about this before. As you spin it forward, and you talk about the great villains in comic books, it starts with Batman. Then you move to probably Spider-Man. Then you get into the X-Men, and then you get into literally everybody else. Prior to that, and I'm not wrong on this, I will accept no other answers. Prior to Disney's reacquisition of all of their Marvel characters from Fox, they really didn't have full access just to do whatever they wanted to do. Yeah, they kind of share Spider-Man with Sony. But in terms of being able to just do Venom or do Carnage or any of Spider-Man's iconic rogues gallery, it was going to be a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think they need the X-Men because they need the compelling villains you get from the X-Men. I mean, I want Juggernaut on screen. I want Magneto on screen. I want to see what they decide to do with Mystique. I want to see all of these characters. The Hellfire Club, bring me all of this. And if retconning Wanda's powers brings us that much closer to it, sign me up. I'm in.
Yeah. Harrison, what's your feeling on the next flashback and, anything that Rob or I said in our segment?
I kind of mentioned earlier, as soon as the bomb blast happened, my mind just kicked into high gear, and I was thinking about any possible meaning that this could have, and I kind of saw it coming. To pull out my Jimmy Neutron brain again, but I was like, oh, they're gonna revisit the time when she has interaction with the Mind Stone, and this is how her powers are gonna be developed. Almost like they're kind of like merging a little bit of the Inhumans with the X gene, which I think is kind of weird, but also super cool. Because I've always kind of had a beef, like why Wanda and Pietro were the only two to survive the experiments. Like, we've known that since, I think, Age of Ultron. Maybe it was Captain America Winter Soldier. I don't remember. One of the two where they were introduced, they mentioned that they were the only two that survived. And it's like, okay, you're going to say that they're the only two that survived, but never really talk about why. So I was excited to have at least what I feel is substantial evidence as to why. And I was also just freaking out about the vision she had, where she sees that herself kind of descending. That was a sweet scene, and I saw those enhanced photos of her costume, and I cannot wait. It looks so good. So yeah, I think I was just having a ball the whole time because I had ideas of what I hoped would happen, and then they happened, and it was just exciting to have my wishes fulfilled. And also, I've been kind of hard because Rob, you seem to always have this firm hope that the X-Men is showing up the MCU. And in my head, I've said it sometimes. I'm always like, no, it's not going to happen. Like I always, whether I say it or not, I always kind of shut that idea down. Like, no, not happening for a few years. But I think I'm wrong. I think that the X-Men will be introduced in the MCU kind of one at a time, so to speak. Like, maybe we'll get Storm in the next Black Panther movie. Maybe we'll get someone else here, just kind of scattered throughout, which I think would be way better than just kind of like ham-fisted, oh, they were in a different universe or a different, section of the multiverse. Let's just bring them in. I feel like that'd be kind of cheap. And I think it'd be cool to have the same way we had a slow anticipation to an Avengers film and then a bigger Avengers film. It'd be cool to see, oh, there's an X-Men in this show, and there's an X-Men in this movie, and now there's an X-Men here and an X-Men there, and now we're having an X-Men movie. So yeah, I'm just excited about all of it. Whatever it means, I think that Rob is right in the villains idea that I'm still hoping that maybe Pietro and Wanda are adopted and we'll get Magneto as their parents. I don't think that's the case, but one can hope.
Yeah. Speaking of just, there's some things that really draw for me. And again, maybe I'm totally reaching, but some parts of her costume and the way it was designed really from the prequel trilogy for X-Men, that started with First Class. I got real Magneto vibes from her costume, just the way it was designed,
Same.
especially from like X-Men Apocalypse and Days of Future Past. Like just the way it was designed, and obviously it's red, which he's always been, but I just got a real Magneto costume vibe from what they showed for Wanda. So again, it just might be me wanting to will that into existence, but I thought that was really cool. And with this scene, you know, at the end, Agatha has a theory about why this happened, but she needs more. And this led to the scene that, again, was pretty emotional to me, and it was just another example of how great these two are together and how I'm just dumbfounded by how far they've come and how far I have come in terms of how much I like these two as a couple. We get Wanda at the compound, the Avengers compound. And Rob, this is before the event happens that takes the Sokovia Accords. But in a previous episode, so I'll let you go after this, you talked about, you know, Wanda before this has had grief. What was it like for her knowing that she tried to do the right thing when they were going on a mission and people in that building were killed because of her? And it's before those events happened, but once again, she is like in this compound and feeling alone. It's the second, you know, this was the first time that this happened to her. And she even says, I was in a new country. I was alone. My brother was dead. And maybe she says that in a different order, but she is just there. She's lonely. She's broken. And she has vision. And so you kind of started to maybe see why there was that, you know, why Vision liked her so much and why he was protective of her in Civil War, because of just this one little scene and the connection that they had. And this is Vision at his best, not understanding something because he can't quantify or whatever you want to say, like why this show that she's watching should be funny. But man, it was, I love this scene, and I love Vision's dialogue about how he like hasn't experienced loss because he doesn't have a loved one to lose, and then talking about like what is grief and everything. Like I thought that was really, really good, and I was truly like moved by this scene, seeing them together. So Rob, I'll let you go first on that.
You know, what's interesting about this scene to me, Matt, we kind of talked about it with The Mandalorian. It feels like they're going back and trying to fix things that went wrong, or go back and correct things. Or, you know, they brought Boba Fett back when they killed him off in just a stupid, terrible, awful way in Return of the Jedi. It kind of feels like they're picking little moments in the MCU, specifically as it regards to these two characters in particular, and trying to fill things in, trying to give us those moments that you don't have time in a blockbuster film to show us. Specifically like this scene, we see that kinship form, that kinship of being kind of alone and not really knowing, and not having anybody else on the team that shares what they share, that grows. And I'm not sure we really saw the relationship developed well in the films. Like it just kind of happens out of nowhere. It's not as bad as the Black Widow Hulk one in Age of Ultron, where it's just like, oh, well, they wrote us to sort of like each other now, so we're going to kind of like each other now. And it just came out of nowhere, and it felt forced and just weird. You know, it wasn't quite as bad, but it still didn't feel like it was well developed. But when you get this scene in context with what we saw before, now it does feel like it's filled in. Just this, it's not even a 10-minute scene, I don't think. And it helps define that so much better for me. And I believe it so much more that when I rewatch, you know, Captain America 3, when I rewatch Infinity War, their scenes together will land much better for me, having seen this flashback.
Yeah, good stuff. Harrison, I would think you said this episode was pretty emotional to you. I would think this would be another one where it was probably at a high level for you. What do you think?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. You know, I mentioned how much that previous scene with her parents really got to me. So I'm sure you guys can imagine how much of a mess I was after this scene. It was when they are sitting there talking, and I was sobbing. I don't know if you guys have ever been in a situation where something happens in your life where you feel a little bit broken, and you meet someone, whether it's a romantic interest or someone that becomes a romantic interest or a friend. They're there in a way that you didn't know they could be, and suddenly they fill a hole. And having experienced that multiple times in my life and seeing Wanda so broken and having Vision, which to what you said earlier, Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen have totally 100% sold me on this relationship. I'm so much more invested than I ever thought I would be in them. They are so great together. That moment, just I was a puddle of tears. Which is so weird for me, but it was really just. I agree with everything you said. It makes everything retroactively in the relationship in the MCU so much stronger, and also makes the next part of what we see so much worse for Wanda. I felt so healed for Wanda and having Vision, and immediately heartbroken knowing that she lost him so soon after. It's previous to this episode, I really was kind of angry with Wanda. I was viewing her as a villain, like she's the worst, she's selfish, she's kind of pathetic, like get over it. And now I'm like, well, like you really are broken, and you do need help. And I can understand why you might lash out with your emotions instead of completely understanding them after all you've gone through. So I thought it was a great scene. I also thought it was a great scene for developing Vision. And when he comes back without his memories, it's going to make that gut wrench even worse, which is obviously the theory that I'm going on. So yeah, probably if I had to pick one, that might be my favorite scene of the entire season. And it was like 5 minutes, if that. It was just those two leads have just ripped my heart out.
Yeah, it's very well said, Rob. I don't know if you have ever had that, what Harrison described, but I once got a Mr. Potato Head for Christmas, and that helped me fill some holes in my life. So I know what you're talking about.
Or is it just Potato Head now?
Oh my gosh!
So, but moving on from my traumatic story of Christmas.
That's so funny.
I will say that for me, the next scene was really the one that actually got me emotionally. I did have a lot of emotions during this, but the next scene is where we get Wanda going to Sword. We saw part of this in an earlier episode, but we find out the whole story here. And you get Hayward. She wants to take Vision and she wants to bury him and give him a funeral. She says he deserves that. And she says, I deserve that. And this is where Hayward again gives me William Stryker vibes from the X-Men. But I also see that we get the hints that he manipulated Wanda, because he says, I can't let you take him. I can't let somebody who can bring him back online, and he says, excuse me, back to life. You have that power. I can't let you do that. And she's super confused by that statement and says, I'm not here for that. I can't do that. I think that was very targeted and deliberate why he said that to her. And we'll get into that later, because I know you guys have some questions and we have some theories. But the thing that got me the most about this episode is after he says, no, you can't take him, she crashes through the glass. We've seen this scene in security footage, and she goes down to see Vision's body. And the scene that got me is she puts her hand on him and she says, I can't feel you. And she says that twice. And the reason that got to me is because when she has to kill him in Infinity War, he says to her, you can never hurt me. I can only feel you. That was where I was like, this sucks. And I was like, damn, that's really good writing. That's a really good callback. And again, just it's the chemistry, and it's a guy sitting on a lab table getting experimented on, so there's no chemistry to be had. But it was so emotional for me with that line. It was just such a great callback, and again, just further drove home like how broken this human being is. Harrison, I'll let you go. I'll let you piggyback. Where do you go from there?
If I was a puddle of tears when Vision and her were watching TV, I'm sure you can just draw some conclusions of where I was the rest of this episode. It just got worse and worse. I don't know what was going on with me, but yeah, when she said, "I can't feel you," I was just heartbroken. I just lost it. I thought same thoughts you had. Great writing, great performance, great chemistry. Just so much, and it's so awful that this show does this to me. It just rips my heart to pieces. But at the same time, I've got to deal with the fact that Hayward is a jerk, and he's the villain here. I've been treating Wanda as a villain when she's just broken and needs some healing, and Hayward, and like to have to deal with so much grief and also confront the progression of the antagonist. Yeah, it was great writing, great television making. That was. I can't say it better than you did. That was just a great moment that, again, taking the show to levels that I was not expecting.
All right. Rob, where do you stand on this?
Matt, I picked up on some very similar things that you did when Hayward says, "Not everyone has the power to bring their soulmate back online, forgive me, back to life." I don't remember her at any point really showing those abilities with what she's done. So it made me wonder, why exactly does he believe that? It was very interesting to me. And yes, I agree 100%. It seemed like he was provoking her. And he said that it was, basically they're functionally recycling him is kind of what he says to her they're doing, which it's been 5 years. That seems a bit weird that they're just now getting around to, doing the recycling run and getting that stuff out to the curb so that it can, be avoided from going into the landfill. But when you really, Harrison, you talked about how this is a very emotional scene for you. It definitely hit me the first time. And the second time I watched this, what really occurred to me about how I'm surprised she was able to keep it together as well as she did, because functionally what she walked in on was not only the autopsy of her significant other, but the organ harvesting at the same. I mean, they're going at the dude's face with an angle grinder, like, and that's her,
Yeah.
like that's her soulmate, and they're just a bunch of people in lab coats casually just like, oh yeah, his left arm's over there, his right arm's over here, his foot's down there. I'm just, somebody flips down the welding shield and they're just kind of working, and in about 15 minutes I get my union coffee break. I'll be back later, guys. Like, and they're just so casual about it. Like that to me was just even more heartbreaking the second time, just thinking about it in those terms, than when I saw it the first time. It's so messed up that she walks in on that. And then immediately from there, just completely breaks down. It kind of reminds me of the film Logan, where Charles Xavier, who is the most powerful mind in the world, when that mind starts to go through something like dementia, how dangerous is that person? When you talk about somebody like Wanda, who's got the abilities that she does, when she has all of this trauma and all of this stress in her life, and nobody truly to share that with. Certainly she has Avengers teammates, but we never get the impression that she's close to any of them other than Vision. We don't really get the idea. Maybe she's got a connection to Black Widow. There's some theories that there's training happening for these new Avengers, kind of recruits at the end of the second Avengers film, Age of Ultron, that perhaps they're being trained. So maybe you could do that, but nobody can really relate to her. She's got a past that nobody can even touch. she's had things happen in her life that none of them have had to go through. Even Tony Stark being captured and having all the terrible things that have happened in his life that have happened. He's not somebody that's just going to sit her down and be like, all right, kid, here's my shoulder. Let's talk this through. So when she has to go through all that on her own, holy cow, that is a very, very dangerous person. It really did remind me of Logan so much in that. And then, for me, honestly, the most emotional scene for me is right after this, when we first see the 50s sitcom in black and white, and he's there, Vision's there, he stares at her and he says, "Wanda, welcome home." And then she turns into the smiling housewife from the 1950s, and she looks so happy. And like, my heart broke at that moment, because I wanted that to be reality for her. I wanted that to be what was actually going on. But I already know that that's not what's actually happening. We've already been through 7 other episodes that have shown us that this isn't real and that there's terrible things about to happen. But seeing that happiness and knowing it wasn't real, wow, did that get to me?
Yeah, I mean, we even get right before that too. We get the scene of when she leaves Sword headquarters. You find out that she Vision left her a deed for a house that looked like that was supposed to be yours, and I'm assuming that that was done before the snap. That Vision was doing these things and got this land for her, because when she pulls into Westview, as it is, or I'm sorry, yeah, it's kind of run down, and it's very reminiscent of the way the world looks in Endgame after the snap, with everybody, with half the population being gone. So for me, it's like the whole ending portion is just kind of like one heart tug after another, that this was supposed to be their life. He had plans for them to be together, obviously, and nothing. And you get that scene where she just, like, all of her magic, or whatever we're going to call it, it just bursts out of her and it creates Westview. I thought that was a really, really cool scene, just visually so appealing. How this world was created and the colors coming in and then switching back. That whole thing was super well done. So Harrison, I'll let you talk about, getting up to the ending, and then, the reveal of the first time that we hear Wanda's code name in this universe. I'll let you take it up to that point.
Okay. Yeah, I was just torn apart by that scene of her seeing the autopsy on her love. That would be horrible. But then to see that Director Hayward lied to Monica and Agent Wu and Darcy and other people there, that Vision had, or excuse me, that Wanda had stolen Vision's body, and all the ideas that I had come to about how she was able to revive him back. Then to see that wasn't the case, that she left peacefully and was just alone with her grief. To then see her drive, and I will point out the level of detail to think, as she drives through this small town, people are dealing with the snap and the unsnap. The world's weird. That's a detail that I wouldn't have even thought about, but seeing it portrayed was great. But yeah, seeing Vision buy her a house, I had to pause the episode because I was just a mess. I am so heartbroken for Wanda. I want nothing but the best for her. I was against her up until this episode. I wanted her to get her recompense for her sins of creating a false reality. And now I'm like, oh, this poor woman, just leave her alone. Just let her be happy. Like, she's just been through so much. Yeah, I was a mess. And similar to what Rob said, that when she creates this reality just out of grief, spontaneously, unintentionally, out of grief and love and loss. Wow, what great writing to have that be
what all of this is all about, and what it means to her, and why she's. I had no idea that I was going to get this much out of this episode. So we go through all that, and we're welcomed back to the world of Westview, and now we get to confront that Agatha, or Agnes, or I said her name right, correcting myself unnecessarily. Agatha is, she's figured it out, and we get the reveal that she is now WandaVision, and she has chaos magic. And there's a part of me that just appreciates the acknowledgement of that, whatever it means, whatever you've read or haven't read in comics. Let me just say this. I think it's great to see a character like Agatha, who's clearly a witch and has been involved in magic, as I'm going to call it, for a long time, and has been searching for power for a long time. And we see someone who has just have power just erupt from them through emotion and horrible situations to gain such power to be sought after by someone like Agatha. And then to be given the title of the Scarlet Witch and chaos magic. For those of you who aren't readers of comics, let me just put it really simply. Magic is defined by so many different things in the comics. When Wanda is first introduced as a character, she has hex probabilities, just the ability to control an outcome of something, no matter how illogical. And later, there's different magic called chaos magic, which, to put it simply, is just magic of large amounts. It's just really powerful magic that can alter reality. It's chaos magic. You know, whatever writers want to define it at that time, it's just extremely powerful magic. And so to see the acknowledgement of that and what has come, or what Wanda has come into through these emotions, and also just a little bit to see the character of Scarlet Witch to get like this mystery, you know, like you're the Scarlet Witch, instead of just like, oh, you're Iron Man, here's your cheesy name. Like it means something in the history of witches and sorcery, which I have some ideas into its connection into the multiverse, but and Doctor Strange. So yeah, just the whole thing is like, oh my gosh, so much is happening. I'm just emotionally destroyed, and then I'm so excited because we're getting chaos magic and the Scarlet Witch, and Catherine Hahn looks awesome as Agatha, and she's flown up in the air and her hair's flying out and she looks totally crazy, and she said her name. Like it's too much. It's like those funny memes where people just freak out and like pass out and the screen goes blank. Yeah, that was me. Like that was me. I was too many things. The show put me through a roller coaster.
Yeah, Rob, take us through your thoughts right up to the end of the episode.
Yeah, so, one of the things that I kind of noticed as we've seen Agatha use more and more of her abilities, we've seen magic from three different groups of people, really, in the MCU so far. We've seen what Wanda's capable of. Her magic it's all red, and we've seen primarily what she's able to do with it in the production design, from an animation standpoint and a practicality standpoint of what it does and what it looks like in several films. We've now seen what Agatha does, and it's purple, and it looks different than hers. But then when we also think about what the magic users in the Doctor Strange, part of the MCU, it's all these geometric patterns and shapes and things like that. The way they access it is different. Even their hand movements are all three of those characters, the Doctor Strange group, all of those wizards and the good guys and the bad guys in that world, they're all accessing basically the same style of magic. It's the same, symbols and the same movements and the same general laws about governing it. I just really think that it's interesting how they did that. They've made three different versions of it, because it really does look like to me that what Agatha is doing, and the way she's controlling and using her magic is very different from what we've seen in those other ones. And I like the idea that there's different ways to access it, and that could mean different things for the future, if we possibly see more magical users coming through. Certainly we keep thinking maybe Mephisto will show up, and that'll mean something. I think it's really cool what they're doing.
Yeah. Whatever that's going to mean, and Harrison, we'll get into this in a little bit here, but chaos magic, and in this universe, fans know that she's the Scarlet Witch, but to this universe, it's a big deal that she's the Scarlet Witch because it means something. So it'll be interesting to see what that means in the grand scheme of the MCU and why Agatha is like so afraid of it, because she tells her like, you don't know how dangerous you are. From everything we've seen, it seems like Agatha would maybe try and like partner with Wanda and control her or use her. But she seems to be more, once she realizes, it doesn't seem like she's that into the fact that Wanda has these powers at the end of it. That's just kind of the impression I got. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens here in this season finale and what it means going forward. Because I mean, this is not the end of the story, so to speak, because we know this ties into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So, Rob, Harrison, I know you guys have some questions and things that we're going to go over, but before we do all of that, what do you guys think? Do you think we should talk about the end credit scene, or do you think we should rate this episode and put the end credit scene as a segue into the questions that we have left over going into the final episode?
I think let's talk about the end credit scene, because that's part of where my rating comes from.
Okay. Let's talk about the end scene, because we finally get in this episode, we did not see Vision, so to speak. I mean, we saw him at the end and in the Sword headquarters, but we don't see Darcy, we don't see Monica, we don't see Pietro, and we didn't see Hayward, but we see Hayward after the credits roll. And we get the answer to the question from last week of what were they getting ready to launch? And what they're getting ready to launch is a rebooted Vision, which we all have a theory on. And he looks incredible. He gave me a real, Harrison, maybe you got this because I pay attention to your letterbox and I pay attention to your reviews. He gave me a Tron vibe with his new color scheme.
Oh yeah.
And I know you love Tron Legacy.
Yeah, too.
But we get to see Vision and we see him coming back online. But the way he comes back online gives me question about who he is, so to speak. So I will go first and say that I really love the end credit scene, and I have one whole theory based off of it. But Rob, I'll let you go first. What's your thought on the end credit scene? And then you said that leads into your review.
Yeah, so I first of all, I love the fact that we were getting kind of the all-white version of Vision that we had not seen prior to this in the MCU. And I love when we get a realistic version of a comic-inspired, costume. I think that's just so much fun, and I love when they do it. Matt, we've kind of talked about before the early X-Men films. They just went with the all black leather jumpsuits and like, okay, this is what you guys would wear. And while that might tactically be what you would wear in the field if you were, battling for the fate of the free world, I like the flashy colors better. I like Wolverine in the yellow and blue. Like, I'd rather see that, if I'm being honest. So being able to see that was super fun for me. I got very, very excited about that. But the way that they did it was kind of, like, I realize, and I've said this before on other reviews, that we're talking about a fake universe where people have magic and gamma radiation turns people into giant hulks, and and there's people who can invent flying machines that don't actually work, and there's super soldiers. It's like, I realize we're talking about a fake universe. I get it. Like, none of this is real. But to me, sometimes, like, the lazy writing that occasionally creates things like, oh, we just had to get a piece from the source, and somehow there's still magic floating around this drone that they had sent in to kill her, that when she dragged it out and it was still just I guess magical auras were around it, and they just put it into a box. And I don't know, is there a vacuum in the box that just sucks the aura out of it and shoots it into, the White Vision sarcophagus and infuses it like, how does that work exactly? Like it's one of there's a couple times throughout this episode, you're just not supposed to ask questions. You're just supposed to just kind of go with it. And that can be fun. Like, trust me, I enjoyed this episode. It was very, it pulled on your heartstrings. It gave you a lot of background details that we really wanted. It was a lot of fun. It answered some questions, and it spurred a whole bunch more questions that we only have one final episode to get answers to. We hope we're going to get answers to it. I think some of this won't get answered until Doctor Strange, but to me, like, it felt kind of lazy. As far as how they were doing it, I didn't like it.
Okay. Interesting take on that. Harrison, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, again, Rob's made me feel like Jack. I'm like the most susceptible person to diversion. Like, White Vision shows up. I don't care what it takes to get me there. Like, I'm all for it. Like, I'm not thinking about the complexities of logistics of getting the aura of Wanda's magic and enjoy it. But as soon as he started to say, I'm like, oh, he actually kind of has a point. But in the moment, I was just like, I was just losing it. Like, we're getting White Vision. And also the idea that kind of what it means that Hayward lied for a reason. What does that mean going forward? Meaning to like Monica and Agent Wu and Darcy. Also, there's now two visions. There's the vision that kind of came out of what I'm assuming is Wanda's connection to the Mind Stone and her memories and her cosmic magic or cosmic. Oh my gosh, I fell for the buzzword. The chaos magic to bring an identity of Vision back. But he doesn't have his memories before Westview. But he's still very much good. He's still very much on the side of life, as he says in Age of Ultron. He's very much who he is, but he's not at the same time. And now we have his physical body that has been his identity, that is now all white, and I'm pretty sure is going to be voiced by James Spader, at least I hope. And and what that means for someone to not have his emotional values, for lack of better words. And I was just losing my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, what a season finale. Yeah, what is this all going to mean? How are they going to wrap all of this up? So yeah, I just went total Jack mode and let him spoon feed me every minute of it and was loving it. And then it ended, and I was like, come on, give me more. I don't want to wait another week.
Yeah. So some varying thoughts on that, but before we get into what we have still open for the season finale, let's give our reviews of this episode. I'll start first. For me, this is 4.5 out of 5 reels. Just a few minor hiccups along the way, but a very, very good episode. Rob, I feel like I don't know, maybe you're not too far off from what Harrison and I think in terms of overall, but maybe you are based on some of the things that you said. Where are you going with this one?
Matt, when you opened this, you had said that your initial viewing, you kind of were down on this, and you sort of came around on it on your second watch through. I was prepared after my first watch and going through the weekend to call this somewhere in the 3s.
I was too.
Because there was, yeah. And on my rewatch, I think some of the things that I disliked, I just kind of maybe didn't pay as close of attention to. I also think some of the more emotional parts that really did land and really did work well carried me through quite a bit more. So for me, this is a 4 out of 5. There was, like I said before, there's certainly some over the topness that we didn't need. There's some writing, there's some dialogue that just doesn't need to be there. Sometimes the best thing to say is actually not to say anything and let the audience kind of do it on their own. We don't necessarily need, every single detail, like just smacked in our face, like, see, this is it. Look at this, I think that's sometimes the fun of a show like this is to have to kind of figure this all out on your own. That being said, some of the real, other than Endgame, which really just hits at 4 or 5 different points of that film like a ton of bricks for emotional impact. This episode of this show has got the most emotional punch of anything we've seen in the MCU, for my money at least, with the notable exception of Endgame.
All right. Harrison, where do you rank this episode? I know what you ranked the season, you said. So does the episode coincide?
Well, before Rob ruined my Jack moment, it was a solid 5. And if I stay in that Jack mindset, which I'm now going to call it for the rest of forever, it would be a solid 5 without a doubt. But with those things that I can't not acknowledge, I would say it's a 4.5. For what it means for the season, this episode without a doubt has made the season as a whole a 5 out of 5. But this episode is a 4.5, if that makes any sense. But that's just because Rob ruined it. Well,
We're going to do a spin-off called Rob Ruins Everything.
Ruins everything.
Harrison, do not get into a long conversation about The Last Jedi with him. You
drink. Yep. We said Last Jedi, everyone drink.
So, my goodness. Overall, there's some varying opinions on this episode between the three of us, but a lot more on the good side of the meter than the bad. But I know we have a lot of theories, and you guys had some questions written down for how this ends. But, listeners, we're going to do a little bit of an extra segment here because this show's coming to an end. So we're going to put out some of our what we need to see, what are the questions that need to still be answered, and maybe do we think we're going to get an answer in those for those questions. So, guys, if you don't mind, I'm going to kick us off here with, it's not really a question, but we have this version of Vision, and Harrison, you talked about it for a brief second. I feel that there's no way it is not voiced by James Spader, and I believe you guys feel the same from our discussion, and that it's going to be Ultron's voice that is behind Vision. And I think there's a lot of clues, especially if you've gone back and watched Age of Ultron, or if you haven't and you just remember that movie. It makes total sense that Ultron would be the voice of this version of Vision. Number one being at the end of Age of Ultron, when Vision gets to that last robot that's left, he says right to him, "You're the last one." And Ultron says back to him, "You were supposed to be the last." So the plan for Ultron was to be Vision. And it seems like Hayward has now accomplished that. So that's my first thing is, this is what I think we're getting in the last episode is Vision is going to be voiced by James Spader. It's going to be Ultron, which Harrison, you mentioned it. I know one of you did, but that's probably going to be devastating to Wanda to hear that voice again. So Harrison, I'll let you go first on that point, and then Rob, you can take us home on this topic.
I was just freaking out because my favorite part of Age of Ultron, which I'm a fan of that movie, by the way, Rob. But
there's some shade being thrown.
Anyway, I really like Ultron. And my favorite part was James Spader. He just, I thought, as a villain, as a voice, was menacing. Seriously, the best part of that movie for me. So I was just thrilled for a chance for him to be back, because that's all I've ever wanted. But then listening to you guys and having some wisdom thrust upon me, I realized, wow, the emotional impact that has beyond just my wish fulfillment is huge. Because of what you're saying, for Wanda to been a part of his force and then to go against him and kind of be the one that starts off this huge event against him. Yeah, that's a lot for she, as if she hasn't gone through enough already. We're going to bring back Ultron's voice. So holy smokes, there's a lot coming with that.
Yeah, Rob, where do you see yourself on this?
So I thought I was pretty slick because I had this thought that we'd heard the rumors that James Spader is credited with appearing in this show, and we all assumed it was somehow as Ultron's voice. Seeing the white vision at the end of it, on my second watch through, I just went, "Oh my God!" When he wakes up and starts to speak, I bet you it's going to be Ultron's voice coming out of there. And I thought I was pretty slick for coming up with that, only to realize that both of you had also come up with that exact same theory independently. So now I'm no longer feeling quite as slick as I once did. I am actually going to try to see if I can get both you guys signed up for Bad Movie Aholics Anonymous, where you just stand up and say, "Hi, my name is Harrison, and I liked Age of Ultron." And everyone's going to be like, "Hi, Harrison. This is a safe place. You can admit you like bad movies here." But yes, the fact that she has to see her soulmate hearing an enemy's voice coming out of his mouth, that is really going to send her some dark places that I cannot wait to see. I hope beyond hope that we are all right about that prediction.
Yeah, the one thing that I'll say too with that is the way that he woke up at the end and he kind of like looks at his hand. He doesn't say anything, obviously, but to me, it was very reminiscent of the way Ultron first wakes up in terms of he's talking about this feels strange. He's very confused when he's first thrust online and Jarvis is there trying to, talk to him. Just the way Vision looked at his hand, it felt very similar to how Ultron woke up. And I don't know. Did either of you guys kind of sense that connection, or maybe you didn't think about it, or do you think I'm just way off?
I didn't catch that, and I think it's telling that this version of Vision did not speak. There's clearly a reason. If they intended it for it to be voiced by Paul Bettany, I think we would have heard it this week.
Yeah. Harrison, any just final thought on that?
Yeah, the way he woke up, I was like, yeah, that's Ultron. It just gave off Ultron vibes and Tron vibes. I do agree with that. Looked very Tron-y, which got my stamp of approval.
There, all right, there you go. So Rob, I'll let you go first. What is one of the things that you had written down as one of your questions? And this is where we'll plug the email address as well for fans to send us their own questions or send us what you think about this little portion of the show here on what we think is going to happen or what we want to have happen. And we'll plug that email here in just a second. But Rob, go ahead.
Yeah. One of the big questions I have is the kids. Are they real? Are they just a manifestation? Because she went from not having, not being pregnant to babies to they're 5, now they're 10 in a very, very quick period of time. Are they real objects? Were they manifestations only of the hex? If the hex falls, do they get dusted? Are they actually somebody else's kids that she's just sort of like cast as her own in her sitcom? Who are they? What are they? Now, I do believe that based on the fact that they are real characters and they do seem to be embodying the abilities of her real sons from the comics, I do believe that they stick around and we'll see them in the future possibly as Speed and Wiccan. But I kind of I'm hoping that we get an answer to that.
Okay. Harrison, where do you stand on that thought process of the kids being real?
I have no idea. Rob, I think you've brought this up before. Isn't Wiccan or Speed, isn't one of them gay, right?
Wiccan is, yes.
Wiccan is. So with that in mind, and I hope this doesn't come across as like offensive or rude, but with that in mind, that makes me think that they'd want to keep them around, trying to have a more inclusive regiment of characters. That'd be kind of dumb to like waste that opportunity, which I know they're trying to create. At least it seems to be a lot of buzz around it. So I think they're gonna, whether they're real or not, I think that they're here to stay, which could happen in a bunch of ways. But who knows? I don't know. I have a question and no answer. So
Yeah, I think they will end up being real. Because again, Agatha does say that she can, and again, I forget the exact line, but she says a being capable of, again, Rob or Harrison, if you remember it, like a being of creating, like a being possible of creating life, existence. Again, I can't remember the exact line.
I don't remember exactly, but she says something like that.
Rob, do you remember what her exact line was? Like what the phrase was?
No, but what I'm thinking about is you go back to the very beginning of this episode, and she's talking about the different kinds of magic, and she, transmutes matter, and she turns the fly and controls the fly, and then she turns it into a bird before she feeds it to the bunny, which I wasn't aware that bunnies ate birds, so that was a little bit weird to me. Maybe the bunny's actually her black cat, the stereotypical like black cat that witches have. She makes a whole. I mean, that's a whole scene. Like that scene had to have been written for a reason, for her to go through all the different types of magic that she's aware of and demonstrates them, and that Wanda's got something else altogether. And that's pretty much what she spends this whole episode doing, is trying to get to the heart of, what are you? How do you do this? I need to understand this better. I actually even think that that's what she's doing at the edge of town when Vision finds her in the Halloween episode. I think she's out there trying to figure out, like, how deep does this power go? How far out does this power go? And is doing research on that sort of thing, trying to figure this out. But I do not remember the exact line.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're real. I think she can at some point just create life. So I think they're real. Harrison, because you had some stuff written down too. What's your next one that you have here?
What is going to happen with Monica and her interaction in Pietro? Last episode, at the very end, the end credit scene we had, she just got her powers as Spectrum, which is awesome. I can't wait for more of her as Spectrum. I think that Tiana Paris is just a great actress, and I can't wait for more in the MCU. Anyway, what the heck is going to happen with her and Pietro? Is Pietro somebody beyond just a manifestation of Agatha? Is he just somebody who's there? What happened with that interaction after he says Snooper's going to snoop? Yeah, like what happened?
Right. Yeah. Rob, what are your thoughts on that? I know we talked a little bit earlier about Pietro. Where do you stand on what sort of resolution we get here, if any real resolution?
So I really do hope that we get more Monica quickly. I've really enjoyed that actress throughout this whole show. I think she's been a highlight. Her as an addition to this show, or to the MCU as a whole. I have as a question, what exactly is Pietro? I will hate if they just make it nothing. If they say, oh, that's a weird coincidence, we cast an actor who played this character in an alternate film universe to play that character in this one. That's just a weird coincidence, you guys. It means nothing. Like, if that's ultimately what they get, that might be my least favorite decision that they've made in the MCU with anything they've done. Like, I will probably hate that more than probably everything else that they've done. If it's just literally the biggest red herring of all time, I will kind of feel a little bit betrayed. They introduced this idea that it could be a multiversal crossover of sorts. For it to be nothing, betrayal is just really the only word I can think of. It would bother me that much.
Yeah, it feels like with everything that they're doing, I mean, unless he just really did not want to come back, if casting Evan Peters is just like a fun little, oh, here you go, here's a wink, but it's going to turn out to be nothing, I just can't understand why you wouldn't just explain it away for Aaron Taylor Johnson to come back. Again, unless, like I said, he thinks he's like too good for the MCU and just didn't want to come back to the show. I don't see why you would deliberately cast this character just to kind of have it be like, no, never mind. I would be pretty disappointed by that if this turns out to be absolutely nothing. So I'll be really curious to see what the final explanation is for him. So just gotta wait for the next episode. Hopefully, hopefully that explanation doesn't go into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Because I'm just going to be racking my brain for too long. I'm sure there'll be enough things for us to think about. I really kind of would like some closure on that one by the end of by the end of the season finale. So that's my take on that. Rob, what's the next one that you got?
Who is Jimmy's witness? We begin with when we meet Jimmy Woo, he's involved, and I've questioned this before. Why is just a random FBI agent involved in something at the caliber that Sword is deeply involved in? Like, it seems like this is a major world-changing event, and yet we have this FBI agent giving part of the briefing in the 4th or 5th episode of the season. It felt strange. So that suggests to me that this person, this part of the witness protection program, this missing persons case that he was called in for in the first place to investigate, that person has to be significant. And we've heard there is a Luke Skywalker level cameo or appearance of some kind. We've all kind of hypothesized, is it actually Doctor Strange? Is it Reed Richards at some point? It's hard to think that Reed Richards would be in the witness protection program or Doctor Strange for that matter. But I think we will probably find out an answer next week as to who that person is. What is really going on with Pietro? I'm with you, Matt. I hope to God it gets resolved and we don't have to wait for Doctor Strange to finally release whenever that actually is, because it feels like movies are being delayed indefinitely at this point.
Yeah. The witness, is a question because it's never been mentioned again. At least I don't remember it being mentioned from that very first reveal. And then Harrison, I'll let you talk about it, but you also had the question of, and it ties into who these people are. Is the engineer going to be revealed? Because it seemed like that was like a real, we talked about it was kind of a letdown moment of, you mentioned it twice and you had to keep saying, I have an engineer friend, only for this somewhat nobody, so to speak, from the military who's like, she doesn't seem like she's in any like huge position to just show up and be like, oh, let me show you what we brought you. Okay. So I know you're having that question of, are we going to get that? Do you still have, has your thought changed on who you think it's going to be, or what are your thoughts on that?
I also wonder about this protected witness, the missing person that Agent was addressing. But I've been thinking a lot about the engineer because everything about the show. This show would not, I don't think, would throw away these things. The MCU and the future of it, and WandaVision has created such detail and such attention to detail that I don't think the mention of a missing person or the mention of an engineer or Evan Peters being cast as a fake Pietro is meaningless. So I've been thinking about what it could possibly mean, and I have no idea. So who is this engineer? Was that military lady who showed up, was she the engineer? Or was the engineer someone that Monica just reached out to get the right specs for, according to Darcy's calculations, and then the military person was just the delivery service? Yeah, I don't know. I still am on the line that I think the engineer is Reed Richards, and you can't have Sword and not the Fantastic Four. That just feels cheap in my mind. And I think that all of us would feel betrayed if that was the case. So I think that it was just one of those things where they're thinking 20 steps ahead, that whenever that Reed Richards shows up, we're going to remember that he was the engineer that Monica had a connection to. That's my thing, but are we going to get any details of that in the last episode? I hope so, but I doubt it. I fingers crossed, but with so much else that we've already covered and some more questions I have, there's a lot to cover in this last episode.
And if something like the engineer isn't covered, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Rob, I know you've watched this show. Harrison, I can't remember if you have, but from a total, what would be a fanboy moment for me is the engineer. If it wasn't Reed Richards and we didn't get a name, Rob, maybe I'm just being a total goof right now. What if for some reason the phone rang for the engineer and it was the 90s X-Men animated cartoon ringtone? And it was like Hank McCoy, like it was because it was like Hank McCoy who was the engineer.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe that's just, it would be like so ridiculous, but oh my God, I'd probably cartwheel or something. Like I just for some reason was thinking that, like, wouldn't that be just ridiculous and such a fan moment?
Look, they're crossing over multiverses and maybe even going a little meta on us at some point. So if the person's phone rings and it's like, I'm in. You got me. I will probably join you doing cartwheels.
Hey, just send it to me on video.
You got it. All right. So, Rob, did you have anything else written down for what you still need answered in episode 9, or something that you maybe need answered? Like we said, some things I think we're still going to have to wait. But is there anything else that you really kind of feel like you need a definitive answer on at the end of this season?
I think we had kind of talked about the witness, and it seemed almost like a throwaway because it was mentioned once and then never again. So if they don't go into depth on what that actually is, I'll be okay. If they don't go into who the engineer is, I'll be disappointed because I want to see the Fantastic Four. But if you think about the end credits scene of pretty much every Marvel film, what it's intended for is to set the bait for us as fans for what's coming next. It's to just bait that hook and say, okay, guys, come back in 3 months because the next film's coming into theaters. Come back in 6 months because the next film is coming back into theaters, and it's gonna be this. Yep. And we're all going, oh my god, you guys, oh my god, and we lose our minds. And it feels like these kinds of little breadcrumbs could eventually lead to some of those things. To me, I really need to know about the kids, and I really, really need to know that Pietro is not just a red herring, throwaway, nothing. Like, those are the things I need answered by the end of next week.
Harrison, same question to you. What do you need? What do you feel you need answered by the end of next week? And what are you willing to play the long game on, so to speak?
I'm definitely willing to play the long game on the missing person and the engineer. What I need to see is more of Monica and Pietro. What happened with that interaction? And I want to see more of Monica as Spectrum. The other thing that I really want to see is, of course, the kids, and also where is Vision and Darcy, and what the heck are they going to do when they show up? And what is this white Vision going to do? And is Agent Jimmy Woo coming back? Does he make it into the Hex in any way? I'd love for a final moment of all of these characters. Even if it's just 10 seconds of Jimmy Woo on screen as Randall Park on screen. I would love that just because I love that character. So I guess that's a small one. So let me answer this question honestly. I want to see something about the kids. I want to see something about Pietro and a lasting meaning of him in the MCU, specifically as Evan Peters. What is he? Who is he? Whatever. Monica is Spectrum, and then Vision and Darcy, and what are they going to do at the end? As far as the long games goes, I'm okay with the engineer and the missing person. The other one that I have a big question on is are they going to mention a Nexus type thing? I know that it was mentioned in a really small way in the commercial. I think it was the last episode. And what that means for Wanda as a Nexus being and the multiverse. And we've talked about how this leads into the multiverse of madness. But this was a thought that I was going to bring up earlier that I forgot. This whole time we've been doing Matt Goes to Movies, I've been talking about this show is going to lead into the multiverse because Wanda creates the multiverse. And I think that isn't the case. I think that this show is going to tie into the multiverse of madness because of the level of magic involved in this
show, specifically with Agatha. So yeah, the main things is just I just want the show to be wrapped up nicely. It's okay if some loose strings continue on to the rest, but to have like major things that go off would feel like a little bit cheap. Like a cheap that the MCU has never done before. You know what I mean? Like for example, you watch Age of Ultron and they didn't leave Ultron alive until the next Avengers movie. You know, like there's things that you have to resolve as part of your story, and those are the things that we've been mentioning. And those smaller things, yeah, I'm totally biting that hook. You know, spoon feed me. Jack's over here. Do what you want. I'm ready to go on the long haul. So, yeah, just those big major things.
Awesome. So I totally agree with everything that you said. Crazy thing is our live session. Actually, I'm going to have to start recapping this episode because our live session is going to end here, folks. This has been a really fun episode, and it's run a little bit longer than we usually do, but it's just because there's been so much to talk about. So I do want to say, again, thank you to everybody for listening. Get your show notes. We wanted to plug the email, but get your show notes with this episode. Thank you to Rob. Thank you to Harrison.